Asmad Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmad Parama Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmad Sarva Gurubhyo Namaha. So yesterday we were talking a little bit about the life and works of Pillai Lokacharya, who is the author of Sri Vachana Bhushana, which is a text that we intend to discuss a little bit. And he also wrote, we discussed about his early life, and we also discussed that he wrote 18 books, and the 18 books that he wrote were all on esoteric or secret doctrines of the southern school of the Sri Vaisnava Sampradaya, the Tengalai school. We were talking about the Astadasa Granthas, or the 18 books of secret doctrines that Pillai Lokacharya wrote. And we had discussed the first 8. So 3 types, three sections of the 18 books. The first, just to recap, the first is there are 8 books on Rahasya Traya, which are the 3 secret mantras. There are 5 books on Tattva Traya and Artha Panchaka, right? And there are 5 other books generally explaining Sri Vaisnava Sampradaya. So we were discussing, and we discussed the first 8 books, which are about the Rahasya Traya, the 3 secret mantras, last time. So now the middle 5 books about Tattva Traya and Artha Panchaka. So in Stotra Ratna of Yamunacharya, in verse 4, Yamunacharya gives a salutation to Parasara Maharishi, the father of Vedavyasa, and who is the author of Vishnu Purana. And he says that through Vishnu Purana, Parasara has undoubtedly stated that the Tattva Trayam are real and eternal. So what do we mean by Tattva Trayam once again? Tattva Trayam means Chit, Achit, and Ishvara. These are the 3 tattvas, or the 3 principles that embody everything. What are they again? Chit means the souls. Achit means insentient matter or the universe. And Ishvara means God, or it means the Supreme, Sriman Narayana. So these 3 are eternally 3 principles, eternally separate also, not as the Advaitins say. They're all one. They're not one. They're 3. So this is a very important principle in Sri Vaishnavism, and in fact in most Vaishnavisms, that there are 3 principles. There's not just one principle. It's not everything is one. There's 3 principles. What are those principles again? The souls. They are matter, and they are God. And the relationship between those 3 things is what we call Vedanta philosophy. So here, what is being said in Stotra Ratna, verse 4, is that Yamunacharya is praising Parasara Rishi for writing the Vishnu Purana, which is the first Purana, the oldest Purana. It's also a Sattvic Purana. There are 18 Puranas, Mahapuranas, and they're divided up into 6 each, 3 sets of 6. 3 times 6 is 18. So there are 3 which are Sattvic, there are 3 which are Rajasic, and there are 3 which are predominantly Tamasic. So the predominating guna or quality of each of these Puranas is important, because the deities that are, the personalities which are glorified as supreme in the Tamasic and Rajasic Puranas are not Sriman Narayana. They are Brahma and Shiva and Shakti and other Anya Devatas, or other deities, not the supreme deity. The supreme deity, Sriman Narayana, is praised in these Sattvic Puranas. And the jewel of the Sattvic Puranas, although some people say the greatest Purana is the Bhagavata Purana, but according to Sri Vaisnava Sampradaya, Vishnu Purana is the greatest Purana, because it was written by the father of Vedavyasa, and it also establishes this Tattva Traya the three principles as being both real and eternal. Well, Shankaracharya says the world is unreal, says the soul is unreal. That's Jagat Mithya is his philosophy. Mithya means illusion. So the world is real. Let's be clear on it. Anybody who tells you the world isn't real, anybody who tells you that you're not real, right? That's not accepted by Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. So this Tattvatrayam is an important principle, right? And Artha Panchakam is another important principle. The Artha Panchaka principles of Artha Panchaka are as follows. Panchaka means 5, and Artha means concepts or methods of gaining things. So Artha Panchaka means there are many sets of 5 things which we discuss in Artha Panchaka, in the book Artha Panchaka. And if somebody wants to study Artha Panchaka, we can study the book also by Pillai Lokacharya. And it describes these 3 tattvas, Chida, Chida, and Ishvara. It describes also the different means. There are 5 means to attain the Supreme, to attain liberation, to attain our original relationship with God. It describes also the things which come in the way of that, the obstacles to attaining moksha. Right. So there are different categories that it describes. So anyway, these are fundamental concepts in Vishishtadvaita, Tattvatrayam and Artha Panchakam. So Pillai Lokacharya wrote 2 books. One of them was called Tattvatraya, and the other one Artha Panchaka. According to Vishishtadvaita, there are these 3 tattvas, Chida, Chida, and Ishvara, as I said, and they're eternal and they're also real. Among them, the Achit tattva, or matter or the universe, right, will keep on changing its Swarupa and Swabhava. Swarupa means its form, its own form. Swabhava means how it interacts. So there are 24 Achit tattvas, right, which means that there are 24 principles of matter, and these are understood from the Sankhya philosophy. And they're delineated as 5 Gyanendriyas. Well, Gyanendriyas, word Indriya means senses. So Jnana means knowledge. So knowledge senses, or knowledge acquiring senses. What are they? They're the ears, the eyes, the skin, right? So different ways, the nose, how we smell, how we hear, how we see, how we touch, tongue, how we taste, right? And then there are 5, so there are 5 of those, right? 5 Gyanendriyas. There are also 5 Kamendriyas. Kamendriyas means not knowledge acquiring senses, but karma means action, so active senses, right? So the active senses are hands, legs, mouth, right? There are these different Kamendriyas. And 5 bhutas. In this case, bhutas doesn't mean living entities, it means elements, 5 basic elements, not the periodic table of elements like broken down like that, but broken down into basically into earth, water, fire, air, sky, or ether, which is delineated in Bhagavad Gita in the 7th chapter, Bhumir Nalo, Bhumirapa, Bhumirapo Nalo Vayu Kam Hanu Purivachai also, right? So we also get the gross elements, the subtle elements, so 5 gross elements, and some other subtle elements, 5 tanmatras. Tanmatras is a different discussion. What is a tanmatra? Tanmatra, we have to discuss that separately, I think, because it's a little bit off the topic. But in the Sankhya system of creation, how the elements come from one another involves this concept of tanmatras, which we're not going to talk about today. But in basic Sri Vaishnava philosophy and from Sankhya philosophy, it's explained how the evolution of matter. Okay, so that's a whole other discussion, right? Then we have Mahan, which is the Prakriti, the Mula Prakriti, Mahan, Manas, the mind, ahankar, ego. These things are all classed together as 24 tattvas, 24 principles. So that's achit. That is achit, or insentient matter. Now chit, or the jivas, the souls, they're considered to be the 25th principle. So if there's 24 principles in matter, or achit, there's another principle, which is the soul. That's also described in Bhagavad Gita, the very next verse after Krishna talks about the insentient, right? He says, that aparayam itastvanyam prakritim vidime param jiva bhuta mahapaho. The jiva bhuta, the jiva is above that, is above those 24, is above that, those material principles. He is a higher principle than that. He's a sentient principle. So that's the jiva is considered to be the 25th principle, and it's given us a higher status, in ontology than matter, than the senses, than the mind, and all these different things. The jiva has a higher status. And then above even the jiva, we have the Ishvara, the third tattva is Ishvara, or God. And obviously God is Parabrahman, Supreme Sriman Narayana, who has an invariable tattva in terms of Swarupa and Swabhava. So he's said to be invariable in terms of his Swarupa and Swabhava. Swarupa meaning his form and his relationships. Swabhava. So his nature, his form and his nature. So somebody may say, well, we see different forms of God in Vaishnavism: Rama, Krishna, Narasimha, Sriman Narayana. So how can you say he's invariable? Although there appears to be a variety, they're all one personality. They're all one personality. They're all the Supreme. So there's no difference. There's no difference between Sriman Narayana and Lord Krishna and Lord Rama, Lord Narasimha. There's no difference between Lord Narayana and his avatars. So the concept of avatars and the concept of the different forms of the Lord comes from the Pancharatra scriptures. And it's a whole other discussion if we want to talk about those things. There's also 5 of these forms: Karnika, Vyuha, Vibhava, Antaryam, and Archa. But we won't go into that right now. But we should understand here that of the Tattva Traya, which we're discussing, the topmost tattva, the topmost principle is the Supreme Lord, Sriman Narayana. So even though the jiva's Swarupa is also spiritual and doesn't, his Swarupa doesn't change, but due to the influence of matter, the influence of these other 24 tattvas, these other 24 principles in Sankhya on the jiva, they cover the jiva with ignorance. At least the jiva in this world, in this what we call Lila Vibhuti. So the Supreme, when he comes here as his avatar, he doesn't get covered. He's being invariable in his Swarupa and Swabhava. He doesn't get covered, and so there's nothing which affects him. None of these 24 principles affect him, whereas they cover with ignorance the ordinary jiva, the ordinary jivatman. So no karmas affect him at all. Whatever he's doing that in this world is only what we call lila, or it's his sport or his play, right? Just like, and the example is just like a play. When you go to see a play, there are actors on the stage, and they act in different roles. So there's a hero, there's a heroine, there's a villain, there's different roles in the play, and the actors are not there. Somebody may play a king, but when the play is over, he's not a king, and another person plays a pauper, a poor person, and he's not a pauper. He's not a poor person. When he finishes the play, he resumes his. But always when he's even doing the play, the person who's playing the king realizes, I'm not a king. I'm just an actor playing the part of a king. So Sriman Narayana understands that. he understands that he is always supreme, even when he comes to this world. Other people are covered with illusions. Sometimes they think that they are their actual character in this drama. This is a drama going on here. Sometimes it's comedy, but mostly it's a drama, and we're all players in that drama. It's the drama of God, and he's setting it all up. And we think that we are certain characters, but actually we're not. Yeah, is there a question? Okay, we're in the chat. Okay. Okay, so anyway, this has got something to do with Tattva-trayam. So, this is all beings are born repeatedly in this world, and they undergo what's called samsara, which is a cycle of birth, death, disease, and old age, where the soul is again born and again dies, and again born in a different body and again dies according to his karma. The karma is attaches to him. The effect of performing different activities attaches to him, and he has to undergo either the good result or the bad result, depending on what actions he performs. Whereas the Supreme Lord, in his leela, in his sport, in his play, he doesn't undergo any effects of karma. So now, once we understand this, we know what's going on. We've set the stage. We've understood reality, how reality is broken up, and we understand all the principles and what's going on in this world. So now, what to do? How to deal with that in an effective way? What's the goal of life once we understand this? So that comes in the Artha Panchakam. The Artha Panchakam explains the nature of the Supreme. You know, what is Ishvara? What is God? The nature of the soul, right? Normally it goes the other way. Normally it's the nature of the soul we try to understand first, and then we try to understand the Supreme. There are some similarities. There are some differences between the Jiva and between the Supreme, the Paramatma, the Sriman Narayana. The means of liberation, because what is liberation? Liberation is getting free from samsara and going back to Vaikuntha and eternally serving God in the spiritual world. So what are the means of liberation? And there are different types of liberation also discussed. And the nature of that liberation. So there's the means of getting there, and there's also the destination, the goal, right? So what is the nature of the goal, actually? So what is liberation? What does it mean? And what are the obstacles stopping us from achieving that, right? That's called moksha virodhi. What would stop us from attaining that? So this is the basis of Artha Panchakam, the book Artha Panchakam. And there are other classifications also in that book. And they're all given in 5 sets of 5. So it's called Artha Panchakam. So we have Tattva-trayam, Artha Panchakam. The first and foremost thing that an individual soul should recognize is that his body is made up of the 24 tattvas that we've just previously explained. And the author explains, Pillai Lokacharya explains in 5 books, he explains different aspects of Tattva-traya, different aspects of that. So the 5 books he has in this section are Tattva-traya, Artha Panchaka, Tattva-shekaram, Prameya-shekaram, and Achiradi. Achiradi is interesting because it's actually a book which talks about how the soul goes after death and eventually ends up in Vaikuntha, and how, what the trip is like. The first one of these 5 in the series is called Tattva-traya. So Tattva-traya has different sections in it. It has 3 sections in it. The first section deals with Achit, which the nature of the soul. Sorry, the first one starts with Chit, the nature of the soul. The next one with Achit, and the third one with Ishvara. So these are the 3 tattvas which we talked about before. It's a book which is written in 202 sutras, again small aphorisms. And again, Manavala Mahamunigal, who was the disciple of Pillai Lokacharya. he also wrote a commentary, elaborate commentary on that one, Tattvatrayam. The second book is called Artha Panchakam, and it has 5 prakaranas. It has 5 different sections. So these are very succinctly about the jiva. So that one's called Jivatma Swarupa. The next one is Paramatma Swarupa. So one is about jiva, one is about the Swarupa of Paramatma, of the Supreme. Upaya Swarupa. Upaya, the word upaya, you're going to hear, I'm introducing you to a lot of terminology here. The upaya means the means to liberation. So what is the form of the means of liberation? Virodhi Swarupa, which normally would come last, but I'm here he's saying it comes fourth. Virodhi means the obstacles in the path of the means, right? The roadblocks along the way to liberation. And Purushartha Swarupam, which means what is the goal? The actual thing to be attained, liberation. What does it mean? What does it mean? For statements in the Artha Panchaka, there's a lot in the Artha Panchaka. There's a lot of agreements and disagreements and arguments in this book. So he quotes, the author, Pillai Lokacharya, in this book, he quotes a lot of different arguments by people on all these subjects. So he gives their argument, which is called the Purva Paksha. It means the beginning argument. And then he gives a Siddhanta. He gives the actual conclusion. So this is normal when we have disputes. When there's a traditional disputation on a philosophy, on different doctrines, normally even the person if you're writing a book about Vaishnavism, you normally will give the view of other people first. Like you might give the view of the Buddhists, or you might give the view of the Mayavadis, the Advaitins first, and you would give their view, and then you would explain how their view is wrong before establishing your view. So you have to do 2 things when you're establishing a doctrine. You have to defeat the other doctrines. You have to say what's wrong with the other doctrines, but you also have to establish your doctrine. There are some different types of philosophical disputes, and they're classified according to how well you do those 2 things. Some people, they're only good at smashing other people's arguments, and they're not good at establishing their own arguments, their own conclusions. So actually, you have to do both. You have to establish your own conclusions, but you also have to defeat the other person's contentions. Whatever that other philosophy is, you have to defeat that. So here in this book, in the Artha Panchaka, he's done both. And he takes the Purva Paksha, the initial arguments by other schools, and he defeats them with valid statements coming from Vedanta and from other Shastras. So then there's another book, Tattva Sekaram. Tattva Sekaram has 5 sections in it, just as Artha Panchakam has 5. Tattva Sekaram also has 5 in it. They're called Paraswarupa Nirnaya Prakaranam, which talks about the Supreme. Jiva Swarupa Nirnaya Prakaranam, talks about the soul. Upaya Swarupa Nirnaya Prakaranam, which talks about the means. Virodhi means the obstacles, Swarupa Nirnaya Prakaranam. And Purushartha Swarupa Nirnaya Prakaranam. So, the word Nirnaya means taking off, removing, complete ascertainment or decision or determination. So in this case, it means determination or conclusive argument. Conclusive argument. So here he's giving the conclusive argument about the Supreme Person, the conclusive argument about the soul, the conclusive argument about the means to attain liberation, the conclusive arguments about what is stopping you, the obstacles, and the conclusive argument about what is the goal. So that is Tattva Sekaram. The next one it's quite a big book, and the next one is called Prameya Sekaram. Prameya Sekaram is quite a small book. and in which the steps are covered of how the Jivatman, who is covered with ignorance in this world, the person who's covered in ignorance in this world, and becomes converted and becomes enlightened and becomes realized, and eventually becomes what is called a Parama Bhagavata, a supremely great devotee, or let's say refugee, because the system of Sri Vaishnavism is not exactly Bhakti Yoga, but it is property or surrender. So there's a slight difference between somebody who's a devotee, who is devoted to God, and another person who is a refugee, who is completely helpless and depends upon the nirhetuka kripa, the causeless grace of God, right, which we talked about a little bit before. But in any case, this word, Parama Bhagavata, usually we call somebody a great devotee of God. He's a Bhagavata. Bhagavata means, Bhagavan means God, and Bhagavata means the devotee of God. So Parama Bhagavata means the greatest devotee of God. So this book is a small book. It deals with Pramaya Sekaram. It deals with how the different steps of how knowledge arises and is realized in the jiva, and how he becomes a great devotee of the Lord, a great refugee at the feet of the Lord. And how he enjoys also, while he's here in this body, while he enjoys the service of God, which is called Kaimkaryam in Sanskrit. So I'm just introducing some of this terminology, which you're going to hear a lot in Sri Vaishnava literature. So the word Kaimkaryam also means seva or service that we do to the Supreme. Now, we can also have Kaimkarya to the Bhagavatas, so the great devotees of the Lord, right? We can also serve them. And that's considered actually to be even greater service than service directly to God. But that's that we'll deal with in another session. So so first of all, we have the soul covered with ignorance, the steps by which he attains knowledge. He finally becomes converted and becomes a great lover or refugee at the feet of God. And then he enjoys the service of God while he's in this body. Once he leaves this material body, videha mukti, he gets liberation, and he attains the ultimate goal of liberation like that. So that book is a small book called Pramaya Sekaram. So the fifth book is called Achiradi, the fifth book in this section. Remember, first section 8 books, middle section 5 books. So we're at the 13th book here. The 13th book, which is at the end of the fifth section, the second section, is called Achiradi. And Achiradi refers to this, the word Achiradi is the path of light, the path of light. Sometimes we read in the Bhagavad Gita that there are 6 months of the year which are considered to be the dark path, and 6 months of the year. So normally people try to, like when Bhishma was lying on the bed of arrows in the Battle of Kurukshetra, he actually lay there for quite some time because he had the benediction that he could leave his body. His soul could leave his body at any time if he wished. So he didn't want to leave his body at a particular, he wanted to wait until the solstice, until there was a change from Dakshinayana to Uttarayana, which means that when the sun is in the south and the sun is in the north, he wanted to actually wait until the sun was in the north, and that was a more auspicious time to leave his body. So this Achiradi Marga is described also in other books like Yadi Nirmada Deepika by Srinivasa, which is the basic tenets of Sri Vaishnavism. It explains it's the path of light by which the soul reaches to Vaikuntha, and there are different things that accompany the soul, and there are different things that go on along the way. So this is called Achiradi Marga or Achiradi Gati. So Gati means going, and Marga means path. So Achiradi is the term used for going to Paramapada, going to Vaikuntha, going to liberation, going to moksha, right? Achiradi. So that's the title of this book, Achiradi, and it's considered to be the white or the light or the bright path through which every jivatman has to travel. And normally, it's said that it's normally by concentrating when the soul leaves the head, the top of the head through the Brahmarandra, and attains moksha that way. And that's the beginning, that's the first gateway to the Acharadi. Okay? So, but whether, you know, wherever the soul leaves or however the soul leaves, that's not that important for the Parama Bhagavata, for the great devotee. But anyway, the description in Acharadi is of the leaving from the Brahmarantha, going to moksha. So the Acharadi talks about this path of travel to Paramapada, to Sri Vaikuntham, which is led by the Adivahikas. There are some like normally when we talk about the soul leaving the body at the time of death, the soul gets what's called an Adivahika body. There's a type of subtle body that carries the soul to the next body, right? So in this case, the soul is not carried to another body, but is carried to the spiritual realm and to eternal service in the form of moksha in Vaikuntham. So there are two other paths for jivatmas, right? When they leave the body. They are called the Garbha Gati, where you're going to go into another Garbha, another embryo. You're going to enter into another birth, right? If you don't go to moksha, then you have to be reborn again. And there's another one called the Dumadi Gati, the Dumadi Gati. But in either case, these are described. And in either case, these other two paths lead to rebirth and just being in samsara again. Sri Vaishnavas do not believe in eternal hell, right? Although Madhvas believe in eternal hell, and also we can make some arguments that there's some mention of eternal hell in the Bhagavad Gita, but that's separate understanding. Sri Vaishnavas believe that eventually each soul will attain Vaikuntha, will become will attain moksha, but it's just a matter of time, basically. So the Acharadi is the final path, because in the Vedanta Sutra, in the very last aphorisms of the Vedanta Sutra, it says, Nacha puna avate, nacha puna avate. It's repeated twice for emphasis. There is no return. There is no return from Vaikuntha. So he says, there's no return, there's no return. That's the sutra in the end of the Vedanta Sutra. So we never come back from moksha. So it's a final destination, it's a final goal, and there's no return from that. So that's all explained in this book, Acharadi. In the Acharadi, also Pillai Lokacharya has written about how the Jivatma starts his journey to eternal moksha, how he travels through what I said, the Sushumna Nadi. Sushumna Nadi, okay, in Yoga Shastras we understand, and also in Pancharatra, there's a description of what we call a Nadi. It can be a Nadi. Nadi means a river. It can also mean a river of energy in the body. It can be also considered to be like a nerve. So a spiritual type of nerve. It's not that we can open up somebody in an operation and we can see their chakras and see their nadis. These are subtle things which you won't be able to see, and you can't operate and remove somebody's, Muladhara chakra or something. You can't, if you ever hear this idea of chakra massage, there's no such thing as chakra massage, because you cannot massage something which is subtle. Maybe you can do a physical massage which affects a subtle area in the body, but these things are subtle. So the system in the system of mystic yoga or Kundalini yoga, which is described in Pancharatra, which is also understood in Sri Vaishnavism, is that there are different centers in the body of power, spiritual type centers of body in the body of power, and these are called chakras. What is a chakra? The chakra is that there are these rivers or nerves of energy that run throughout the body, and they basically run up and down the spine. And from the base of the spine, which is called the Muladhara chakra, right, or at the base of the spine, up to the Sahasradhala chakra at the top of the head. So there are three nerves or three spiritual rivers or rivers of energy that run up and down the spine. And these are called Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. So the Ida is on the left, and each one of them crosses over and crosses back like a snake until it reaches the top. Where the two snakes cross Each time the two snakes cross, each time they cross is a center of power, and that is called a chakra. Okay, so the Acharya book here describes about how the jiva has to elevate itself through the Sushumna Nadi, which is a river of power coming out from the Sushumna, which is at the top of the head, right? Through the top of the what's called Shirakapalam, Kapalam, or the Sahasradhara chakra here. So in Pancharatra, it's also described a little bit more about this mystic yoga. So the Atma gets out of the body here, and with the help of the Yatibhadikas, it travels on the Acharya path, or the Acharya, and is welcomed in different worlds, and ultimately sheds completely the material body of gross elements is shed immediately at death, but the subtle body continues with the soul until it gets up to a place called the Viraja. And the Viraja is a river, or is a demarcation between the material and spiritual worlds. And it's considered to be like a river, which you take a bath in, and completely wash off all of these, whatever's left of the material body, the subtle parts. And then after that he has his pristine form. The jiva is in his pristine form after bathing in the river Viraja. He has his pristine form, and he goes on to meet Sriman Narayana in Vaikuntha and to engage in Sriman Narayana's service forever in Vaikuntha. So this is what the book Acharya is about. This is the 13th book. So this ends the second section of books by Pillai Lokacharya. So now the third set of books by Pillai Lokacharya are about Sri Vaisnava Sampradaya, about the tradition of Sri Vaishnavism. And remember, Sri Vaishnavism is a tradition which is made up of all these things. What is it made up of again? It's made up of Vishishta Dvaita Vedanta, right? It's made up of the spiritual understanding from the Upanishads, the eternal Vedas, right? Of qualified non-dualism or holistic non-dualism, right? It's not dualism, it's not monism, but it's something different based on the Sharira-Shariri Bhava, the analogy of the body-soul relationship, the relationship between the three tattvas. So it's based on that, Vishishta Dvaita Vedanta, number one. The second thing it's based on the spiritual sayings, or the deep devotional sayings of the Alvars in Tamil, in the 4,000 Nalayir Divya Prabandham. And also, we put into it the philosophy and the school of Pancharatra, which talks about the 5 forms of God, and also talks about this yoga system. In all the Pancharatra Samhitas, there are different sections: Jnana, Yoga, Kriya, and Charya. These are the 4 sections in Pancharatra. So Jnana means, of course, about the Tattvatraya, right? Yoga, again, describes about this mystic yoga and Kundalini yoga. Kriya is different activities of installing deities and making temples and doing different things. And Charya is actually the actual worship of God through the Pancharatra system. So these are the 4 sections in the Pancharatra system. So again, what is Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya? It's a culture, it's a tradition made of these 3 things, right? Because it's not just panentheism. Vishishta Dvaita Vedanta is panentheism. Panentheism there can be Vaishnava panentheism, there can be Shaiva panentheism, there can be Christian panentheism, there can be whatever. You can have a religion. Sri Vaishnavism is not just a religion, it's also philosophy. So when we take just the philosophy part, that's Vishishta Dvaita. The religion part, if we add it, the religion part is Sri Vaishnavism. So, Vedantically, we are panentheists, right? But we are also Vaishnavas, because there is a system. For instance, there's a Shaiva system of Shaiva Dvaita, which is panentheistic, but it's Shaiva. They say Shiva is supreme. So, Sri Vaishnavism Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya is Vishishta Dvaita Vedanta, or panentheism, based on the Vedanta. it's the wonderful expressions and deeper meanings behind the 4,000 holy prayers of the Alwars, right? All the emotional and devotional prayers of the Alwars and their deeper meanings, which also reflect the meaning of the Vedas, but simply in vernacular Tamil language. And on top of that, it includes the philosophy of Pancharatra, which explains to us Jnana, Yoga, Kriya, and Charya, which I just described. Okay, so that's what Sri Sampradaya is. So he has written 5 books. Pillai Lokacharya has written 5 books about Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. So explaining the Sampradaya, Pillai Lokacharya says, these books, these are Samsara Samrajyam, Navaratna Malai, Nava Vidya Sambandham, Prapana Paritranam, and last, and his magnum opus, his greatest work, Sri Vachana Bhushana. Sri Vachana Bhushana. So the first amongst them of this section, of the last section, from number 14 in the 18 works of Pillai Lokacharya, is this Samsara Samrajya. So in that book, he says every jiva thinks that he lives in a kingdom and thinks that he is the emperor of that kingdom. Everybody thinks like that. And this is given also in the Bhagavad Gita. The demoniac mentality is sometimes called Ishvaraham Maham Bhogi. I am God and I am the enjoyer. Whereas Krishna doesn't say that. He says that he is actually the only enjoyer. He says, what is it? Gyatvam Shanti Michiti. Anyway, in the 6th chapter, Krishna says that he's the only enjoyer. Suhridam Sarvabhutanam. The verse is not coming to me right now, but that's okay. I'll think of it later. Anyway, so the jiva is also thinking like that. He's thinking the reality is that Ishvara, the reality is that God is the only enjoyer, right? He's the only enjoyer. He's the only proprietor, right? The emperor is the enjoyer, and he also owns the kingdom. He's the proprietor. So he not only lives in the kingdom, but he owns the kingdom, the emperor. So every jiva is thinking that. Every jiva is at least they're thinking that about their own body and mind, right? Somebody may be born in very poor circumstances. They may not have a house. They may not have many possessions. But at least they think, this body is mine. You know, this body is mine. This mind is mine. But that's a complete illusion, actually. Everything belongs to Sriman Narayana. So this book explains that he's actually, in reality, not the emperor of his kingdom, not even the owner of his own body, not even the controller of his own mind, but he's in fact a prisoner. He is in fact a slave to all of these 24 tattvas that we talked about in the material world. The Jivatma doesn't know how to get out from that prison. Once he realizes he's a prisoner, see, most people are in illusion. They think they're the emperor. But actually they're prisoners. They're prisoners, they're slaves. They're under the dictate of all these things. Mama Maya Durataya, Krishna says in the Gita. My Maya, my illusion is very hard to overcome. So anyhow, once the jiva realizes that he's a prisoner, then how to get out from that? How to get out from that prison? The jivatma doesn't know how to get out. And this book, Samsara Samrajyam, is a book where the Pillai Lokacharya, the author, advises us how to reject things and how to accept other things and how to concentrate on the Supreme Lord, and in this way, get out from the prison that we find ourselves in. Because once we realize what the truth is, we're in a prison. As long as we don't know the truth, as long as we're in illusion, we're happy, right? Sometimes they say, fools are blissful. Ignorance is bliss. Ignorance is bliss is a saying, right? So as long as you don't know, that you have to take birth again and suffer again for eternity, you're happy. As soon as you realize that you're the eternal soul in the body, and that the body doesn't even belong to you, the mind doesn't even belong to you, and none of this is, and that you're eternally going to suffer in this world. You'll enjoy it also a little bit, but it's all really suffering because it's not eternal, you know. As soon as you come to that realization, then you get very upset and you get very afraid. How can I get out of that situation? And so he, in this book, Samsara Samrajyam, he explains how we can reject certain things in our lives and how we can accept other things in our lives and concentrate on the Supreme Lord, and thus free ourselves from this prison that we find. As soon as we realize we're a prisoner, we want to get out of the prison. Okay, so that's that book. So the second work is called Navaratnamala. Navaratnamala is very interesting. In South India, sometimes people have a mala or a garland which is made of 9 jewels, and sometimes they'll make them out of jewels which represent the different planets in the heavens, because they want some astrological benefit. Yeah. If you go to any shop in India, any jewelry shop, and you ask them for a Navaratnamala, they'll give you a garland which is made of 9 jewels and specific jewels for the sun, for Mercury, for Venus. They'll be there. Okay? So this book is written like that. It's called the 9-jeweled garland, the 9-jeweled garland. And it describes how the Jivatma should understand about 9 subjects. 9 subjects. They are, the 9 subjects to be understood by the Jiva are the self, the body, the relatives coming through the body, other Jivatmans in samsara, right? Then Anya Devatas, or the Devatas, the other celestial beings, which are not gods, but which some people call demigods, right? Greater living beings, right? Sri Vaishnavas as a group. Acharya Purushas, which means people who are gurus, people who are able to impart knowledge to you, right? So also a subsection of Sri Vaishnava, right? Then Mahalakshmi, or Pirati in Tamil, Mahalakshmi, and also Sriman Narayana. So these are the 9 things which are covered in this book. What are they again? The individual self, his body, our body, the relatives that come with us, our family members who are related to this body, other Jivatmans in samsara around us, specifically amongst those other Jivatmans around us, the ones that are above us in status, the demigods or the Anya Devatas, right? Like Surya, Kubera, Shiva, Brahma, Chandra, Indra. Then Sri Vaishnavas, right? Amongst Sri Vaishnavas, the Acharya Purushas, because we have one relationship with all Sri Vaishnavas, but we have another relationship with a person who's actually a guru, who's teaching us something, who's giving us knowledge. Acharya Purushas, and then Mahalakshmi, who is very important in Sri Vaishnavism to both sides of the Sampradaya, the Vadagalais and the Tengalais, because she is the Purushakara. She intercedes between us. The Acharya Purusha also intercedes between us and God, and mediates between us and God, because we are great sinners who have a pile of sins are weighing us down here in this material world since time immemorial, and we need somebody to make a deal for us, to intercede in between us and God, because if there's nobody interceding with us, the rule is we just have to suffer because we've committed so many sins, and that will be eternal because we keep committing more and more sins. So somebody has to break that cycle. Somebody has to come in the middle and say, look, you're suffering in the material world. The Supreme Lord's here. He wants to give you liberation. Let's make a deal. So there has to be a mediator. So the mediator is Mahalakshmi, also the Acharya Purusha, the guru. And finally, the 9th subject of this book is the Sriman Narayana himself, the Supreme Person. So, also in this book, there are 9 unbreakable relationships between the soul and God. And these relationships are also explained. And these relationships, even though we're here in this material world, we're covered with ignorance and Maya, illusion, still those 9 relationships can't be broken. And we can go into what the 9 relationships are in some other, actually, we should understand them because they're spoken about in this particular book, this Navaratnamala. But just run over them quickly in Sanskrit. We can talk about them in more detail some other time. So even if the jiva tries to break one of these relationships, or even if the Lord were to think to try to break one of these relationships, it's just not possible, because these are eternal, intrinsic relationships between the God and the soul. So they are as follows: the Pitri-Putra relationship, the relationship between father and son, or parent and child. The second one is the Raksha-Rakshaka Sambandha. Sambandha means relationship. A Sambandhi is a relative. In Tamil and also in Sanskrit, if I have somebody who's my brother-in-law, he's my Sambandhi. Right? So Sambandha means relationship here. So Pitri-Putra is the first one, between the father and the son, or we can say between the parent and the child. Could be between the mother or the father and the son and daughter, whatever. The parental relationship. The second one is the Rakshaka Sambandha. The relationship between God and the soul, that the soul is being protected and God is the protector. God is the protector, the soul is being protected. The Shesha Sambandha, right? A Shesha is a servant and a Sheshi is a master. So that God is the master and we're the servant. He's the master, we're the slave. These are eternal relationships. The fourth one is called the Bhartri-Bharya relationship. Right? The Bharya is a husband and wife relationship. So there's a husband and a wife. The Lord is the husband and the jivas are all the wives, the consorts of the Lord. The Jnatva Jnaya Sambandha, the knower and the known. The knower and the known. The Swaswami Sambandha, Swaswami Sambandha. The Swa, the individual, the person, and the Swami, the Lord relationship. The Sharira Shariri Sambandha, which we talked about a little bit before in Vedanta. The Sharira, the body and soul relationship. God is the soul of the soul. So the soul is like the body of God. The universe is like the body of God. The Adara and the Adeya relationship. This is the 8th one. Adara, Adeya. The support and the supporter. Right? The supporter and that which is supported. And finally, the Bhoktya and Bhogya. The enjoyer and that which is to be enjoyed. So in each case, the soul is to be enjoyed. God is the enjoyer. And the soul is only to be enjoyed by God, not to be enjoyed by others. And God is the only enjoyer. Okay. So this relationship, these 9 relationships which are spoken of are also mentioned. So there's to just recap, this particular book is called Navaratnamala. It's about 9 different things. So the first set of 9 things we already described: the self, the body, the relatives, the jivatmas, the samsara, in samsara, the devas, the Sri Vaishnavas, the Acharya Purushas, or gurus, Mahalakshmi, and Lord Narayana, right? And the second set of 9 things are the different relationships, unbreakable relationships between the soul and God, right? Which I just described. So those are the first 2 sections of this book. The third section let's say in this book, Pillai Lokacharya explains these relationships, how they're included, how these 9 relationships are included in each syllable of the mantra Om Namo Narayana, Tira mantra. Now, it's very interesting because there's only 8 syllables in Om Namo Narayana. So how he explains these 9 relationships in the 8 syllables is given in this book, in the third section. In the fourth section of so then the next book that we come to is the 4th book out of the 5 in the third section about Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, or the 17th book in the 18 overall. The 17th book is called Parampara Pillai, right? And it follows on from a very famous sutra in Mamukshapati, which we're studying now, which speaks about where Pillai Lokacharya explains how the father, mother, brother, husband, son, accumulated wealth, and demigods will not be able to save us. They will not be able to save us. People sometimes think that these people can save us. But Prabhupada used to say they're infallible soldiers. They're fallible soldiers, not infallible. They're fallible. They're useless. They cannot save you at the time of death. They cannot save you from samsara rebirth. So at each of these occasions, it's only Sriman Narayana who can save the Jivatma. So in this book, again, the 17th book, Parampara Pillai, which we can go through it sometime if we like. It describes how only the Supreme Lord can save us in every situation. And the last book, and the magnum opus, the greatest work of Pillai Lokacharya, is Sri Vachanabhushana. And Sri Vachanabhushana is praised in a book called Upadesha Ratnamala. So Upadesha means teachings. Again, Ratna means jewel, and Mala means garland. So the jewel garland of teachings. This book was written by Varavara Muni, or otherwise known in Tamil as Manavala Mahamuni, or Manavala Mahamunigal, to be polite. And he has explained the deeper meanings in this of the word and of the title and of the book, Sri Vachanabhushana. Sri Vachanabhushana means what? Bhushana means ornaments. Sri can have a lot of meanings. Can have a lot of meanings. Sri, of course, means the goddess Sri. It means auspicious. It means many, many things. So we can go on and on and on talking about what Sri means. Vachana means the teachings, means the sayings. Vachana, to speak. We say Sri Krishna, Sri Bhagavana Vacha, Uvacha, Vachana. So the sayings, the Sri sayings, the auspicious sayings, the spiritual or holy sayings, the ornament of holy sayings, right? Who is able to practice? It's not so easy to practice. The Sri Vachanabhushana has 463 sutras or trunikas, these small aphorisms. And there's a big commentary written by Manavala Mahamuni. And also there are commentaries written by other people as well. So it's divided up into 6 sections. These 463 sutras are divided up into 6 sections. It starts by saying about the Vedas and the Shmitis, the Itihasas and the Puranas, all these different Vedic books. And it ends up talking about the greatness of the Acharya, the greatness of the Guru, the person who is going to teach these books, the person who's going to teach the three secrets. So, in short, the deeper meanings of Sri Vachabhushana can be summarized as the Vedas and Vedanta declare the importance of Acharya Abhimana. So Acharya Abhimana, again, in Artha Panchaka, if we'd studied Artha Panchaka, there's a system of going to moksha, a method, an upaya, called Acharya Abhimana. The 5 upayas for going to moksha are what? Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Prapatti, and Acharya Abhimana. So here, Acharya Abhimana is the last one. So what Karma Yoga means working and giving up the fruits of the work, and there's King Janaka, is, according to Bhagavad Gita, is supposed to attain liberation in that way. It's a very difficult path. Jnana Yoga, by studying and understanding the deep philosophical scriptures like the Vedas and Upanishads, then one can get realization. There's a phrase, Jnana Mokshaha. So moksha comes from jnana, from knowledge, from realized knowledge. So that's jnana yoga. That's also very difficult. Then bhakti yoga, the process of devotion, shravanam, kirtanam, vishnu smaranam, parasevanam, archanam, vandanam, dasyam, sakyam, atmanivedanam, all these different types of bhakti, types of devotion that we can perform in order to attain moksha, right? So there's first 3. Then prapatti means just surrender to the Supreme. There are different types of prapatti which are described in other books, other more basic books than Sri Vaisnava Bhushan, like Yatina Madhudipika talks about different forms of prapatti. There's 2 or 3 different forms of prapatti, but we won't go into those right now. So surrender, basically surrender is surrender and attainment of God like that. And the last one is for persons who can't do karma yoga, can't do jnana yoga, can't do bhakti yoga, people who find it even impossible to surrender directly to God. A person who has a good acharya, who has a good teacher, right? And who simply follows the teacher and has great 100% faith in that teacher, right? That person, that may be the easiest method to attain liberation. So that is the end point of Sri Vachanabhushana. So starting from the Vedas, right, and ending up with the Acharya Abhimana, that's one way of looking at the Sri Vachanabhushana. But there's many different parts in between. There are invocatory verses to each one of the 6 parts of Sri Vachanabhushana, so that's how it's divided up. The first part talks about mediatorship, right, and talks about the glories of Mahalakshmi, how she's a mediator. In that part, we have to talk about the Dwaya mantra, because the Dwaya mantra explains very clearly about the Purushakaram, the mediatorship of Mahalakshmi. We could also, anybody who hasn't read Sharanagati Gadya of Ramanuja, they should read that to understand the basis of the mediator, the position of mediator or Purushakara between the souls and the God of Mahalakshmi. The second part of Sri Vachanabhushana describes the glories of the Supreme Lord, and explains how he himself is the means. He's the upaya, and he's also the upaya. He's also the goal. So not only is he the goal, service to him in Vaikuntha eternally is the goal, but he's also the means for that goal, of how to attain that. So in that section, Pillai Lokacharya explains how other things which we think are the means, karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, all these things for attaining the Lord, are not really. Like taking the child from the parents and giving a child to a person like a butcher or somebody else who will not have any relationship with the child and will not care for the child. So Sriman Narayana is a parent. He's a parent. And he alone, through him alone, we are going to attain him. In the third section, he explains about the adhikari for moksha, or the qualification to attain liberation, who can be a Sharanagatan, or a person who performs property, how he should live and how he should behave. And in the fourth section of the book, he elaborates on the relationship, the qualifications for an acharya and the qualifications for a disciple. Many people, they emphasize the qualifications of the acharya. The guru has to be like this. He has to be perfect. But they forget also the disciple also has to be perfect. The disciple also has to have many qualifications. So both the lakshanas, the qualities, the qualifications of the disciple and the qualifications of the guru are explained in the fourth part of Sri Vachanabhushana. In the fifth part, it gives details of what's called nirhetuka kripa, what it means by causeless mercy. Because the Tenacharya Sampradaya, or the Tengalai Sri Vaishnavas, the Protestant school or southern school of the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, emphasizes very much about causeless grace and causeless mercy of God. So this is dealt with in the fifth section of Sri Vachanabhushana. Whereas the Vadalai Sampradaya, the Deshka Sampradaya, or the part of the Sri Sampradaya that is, they also believe in grace, and they believe in Acharya Abhimana, they believe in all these things, but they have a little bit of a different understanding of how grace works, that it should be cooperative, there should be cooperation, and that there should be a certain effort involved, and certain qualifications, also different qualifications of the prapanam. The final and sixth section of Sri Vachanabhushana deals with Acharya Abhimana, which is what I said was the Panchama Upaya, let's say. The fifth means. So Kama Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, property, even to the Supreme Lord, right? For those persons who can actually do it, right? And then if we have even no qualifications to do that, simply 100% trust in the Acharya, and faith that the Acharya will guide us to moksha. That's Acharya Abhimana. And an example of normally, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but normally people do not practice Acharya Abhimana separate from property to God, from surrender to God. Okay, we practice them together. We surrender to the Acharya, we also surrender to God. The Acharya is a mediator, like Mahalakshmi, also helping us to surrender to God. There's no difference in that. It's not a separate path, really. We're doing it together. But there are examples of some people, and the famous example in the Alwars is Madhur Kavi Alwar. Madhur Kavi Alwar did not write any prayers to the Lord. So why do we consider him to be a great Alwar, a great saint, a great devotee? He didn't pray to God at all. If somebody says, well, we have this saint, but he never prayed to God, would you consider that person to be very saintly? No. But Madhur Kavi Alwar wrote only one prayer, and that prayer was to his guru, Nam Alwar. And that prayer is called Kaninun Siddhatamba in Tamil. And so he exemplified amongst the Alwars this idea of Acharya Abhimana, of having total faith in the Acharya, his Acharya Nam Alwar. So I don't know what God is, I don't know who God is, I don't know how to approach God, but I do know my guru, and I have total faith in him, and therefore that is Acharya Abhimana. And so he exemplifies that amongst the Alwars, Madhur Kavi Alwar. Again, in the time of Ramanuja, in Ramanuja's life, he had a cook. There was a situation in Sri Rangam where Ramanuja wanted to actually change some of the procedures in the temple and really get the temple running correctly and and make sure that the management of the temple was going on very nicely in certain ways. And he was unable to do it for a while. And the people who were in charge actually were quite envious of Ramanuja, and they didn't want him to do that. And at one point, there was even a plot to kill him, and somebody tried to poison him. So after they tried to poison him, and he realized that the poison was there and he didn't eat the food. So after that, somebody was appointed to be his personal cook. See, normally a sannyasi doesn't cook, because sannyasi can't cook for himself. Right? Bhagavad Gita says, "So sannyasi cha yogi cha naniratnina chakriya." Right? He's a sannyasi and a yogi who lights no fire and performs no work. So a sannyasi doesn't have a job. He performs no work for making money, for having his house and his household. Right? So he has no material work. Right? He's unemployed, let's say. Right? And he lights no fire. He doesn't cook for himself. So Ramanuja couldn't cook for himself, being a sannyasi, so somebody else had to cook for him, right? So they appointed somebody to cook, to make the food for Ramanuja, and that person was boiling milk one day in the ashram of Ramanuja when the procession of Namperamal, the processional deity of Sri Ranganatha, was coming around in the Tiruvidi, the holy streets surrounding the temple. And when a procession of the Lord comes, you're supposed to come out, offer your obeisances, and follow along with the procession of the Lord. And chant prayers also to the Lord. And to take darshan of the Lord and have him have darshan of you. That's why he comes into the street. Because maybe you're too lazy to go to the temple. So he comes out in the street, out of his causeless mercy, to see you. So Ramanuja told all his disciples in the ashram, come on, our Lord, Namperamal, is there in the street, coming in the procession. We have to go out and greet him. We have to serve him, by chanting so many stotras and things, and we have to follow along. He commanded all his disciples to do that. Every one of his disciples went out except for this one man who was cooking milk on the stove. What did he say to Ramanuja? Ramanuja was like, you're my disciple. Why are you not obeying my order here? Let's go. Let's go worship the Lord. He said, you go worship your Lord. I have to stay here for the worship of my Lord. So what did he mean? He meant that I have to watch the milk, because if you don't watch milk, it boils over and spoils. So when you're cooking milk, you have to watch it, because instantly it boils over and spoils. So he had to watch the milk that he was preparing for his Lord. His Lord is his Guru, Ramanujacharya. And he felt that that was more important service. That was more important service than going and serving the Supreme Person, Lord Ranganatha, in his procession as Namperamal. Even to the extent that he disobeyed his Guru's order to go and do that. No, you're giving me an order, that's fine, but I'm serving you by cooking this milk. Ramanuja similarly also had this situation where he was commanded not to speak the mantra to anyone by his guru. One of his gurus, Goshipuna, told him, this is a secret mantra, don't tell everybody. And immediately he went and stood on top of the temple and told everybody the mantra. Right? His guru said, why did you do that? I told you not to do that. Right? He had implicit faith in the words of his guru. His guru said, anybody who hears this mantra, chants this mantra, will go to Vaikuntha. That's what it says in the scriptures. Om Namo Narayana iti mantra pasikaha Vaikuntha bhuvana lokam gamishyati. So he remembered that and he told everybody. When his guru said, if you keep it secret, don't tell everybody because you'll go to hell, he thought, no, if I go to hell, okay. Everybody will go to Vaikuntha. So he knew what he was doing. He knew that he might go to hell, but still he disobeyed his guru and gave everyone the mantra so they could go to Vaikuntha. So anyway, this last part of Sri Vachanabhushanam is about Acharya Abhimana, having faith in the Guru. How you have faith in the Guru, I just explained, Madhukavi Alwar, the cook of Ramanuja himself, how they had faith in their gurus, even to the extent where sometimes they disobeyed the Guru. the direct orders of the Guru, but still they had extreme faith in the Guru. Right? So it's some very interesting things. So this is the last part of Sri Vachanabhushana. So again, Sri Vachanabhushana is praised in this book by Manavala Mamuni, Upadesha Ratnamala, as a great Shastra. And also is called Vakula Bhushana Shastra Saram. It's called Vakula Bhushana Shastra Saram, which means the deep meanings of Sri Vachanabhushana have its roots in those 1,000 songs in Tamil of Namalwa called the Tiruvai Moli. So Swami Manavalama Munigal has written a remarkable and elaborate commentary on Sri Vachanabhushana. So those are the 18 books of Pillai Lokacharya. So let's finish it off here, and we're going to continue. We'll finish off the life and leelas and works of Pillai Lokacharya in the next session.